The Loneliest Creatures in the World by Touches Like the Sun, Part 4. They rotate for days, sleeping in empty alleys behind counters of closed restaurants and cafes, new, empty, and abandoned houses, and wherever else they can find. They sit on the edge of streets to eat, putting their containers aside when they're done, dusting their hands off. They pull their coats tighter, and when Chuuya is still trembling badly, Dazai raises his own big black coat and allows him to huddle against his side. The best way to keep warm is by other people's body heat. But Chuuya is cold. It is uncomfortable for Dazai, and he was already cold too as it was, his own lack of sufficient fat making it harder to keep warm. It doesn't help when Chuuya seems to take that as an invitation to push his hands up to his underarms, to his violent wince at the sudden jolt of ice through his shirt and into his skin, apparently just seeking warmth wherever it was closest. Dazai forced Chuuya into a few thick shoplifted sweaters, but it seemed it really wasn't enough, and it became even less effective as the days went on and the season was getting colder. They can't stay sleeping on floors anymore. Dazai could have. Despite his ill health and thinness, the human body is rather durable. But Chuuya's ill health is on an entirely different level, and is not quite up to par with being able to handle it. To be frank, Dazai is sometimes surprised at how Chuuya is able to walk around still and talk at all. "Ah," Dazai mumbles, voice strained. "Maybe Chibi should—" He pulls Chuuya's hands away and lets them hold his own instead. He even rubs Chuuya's hands between both of his because he's oh so nice. So Chuuya owes him big time for this. 10 favors for this, really. Chuuya's hands get warm enough eventually, and Dazai thinks he should let go. But when he tries to, Chuuya sort of just doesn't let go. And, well, Dazai supposes he can't really fight the chibi about it, or else the chibi would get upset and float away. Which is not safe out in the open, so of course it's very important that Dazai keeps holding his hand to nullify him, so he doesn't end up flying off into space or something. He doesn't move for a long time. The Chuuya falls asleep against his shoulder. He gets sleepy after eating, despite how little it is. His stomach full on a small portion due to his low appetite. Dazai doesn't move. His back starts to hurt. He only moves when waking the chibi up with a single shake and a quiet voice in his ear, when it starts to become unbearable. "Time to go, Chuuya," Dazai says, and the chibi sits up. His head lolls a little on his neck, still half out of it, eyes closed. It takes him a while to blink himself awake. Dazai watches him, surprisingly patient. Or maybe it's just that there's something strangely mesmerizing and sweet about the way Chuuya wakes up, or even falls asleep. "Where will we go?" Chuuya mumbles. "We'll see." Dazai lets go of his hand, shrugs his coat off to leave it on Chuuya, and stands to his feet. He holds out a bandaged hand. "Come, Chibi." Chuuya puts his hand in his, letting Dazai draw him carefully up to his feet. He does not expect Chuuya to put the other side of his coat around Dazai's shoulders, despite still being half asleep as they begin to walk together down the street. Twilight has set over the city, and the sky is a deep purple blue, the streetlights turning on and illuminating the way with yellow light. Stupid Chibi, squeezing at his cold little heart with his tiny hands. The destination they're heading to is on the countryside, far out from the city in an area that's fairly deserted. They travel on the train towards the end of the line, sitting on the booths throughout the night, again huddled under the same big black coat, the only sound the steady whir of the engine. Chuuya is pressed up against Dazai's side and watching out the window as the train travels up the arch and the city grows smaller under them. Gold and white and blue points of light and rush of cars on long lit roads and shadowed silhouettes of buildings in the night. On the window they can see the reflection of their own faces. On the window Dazai watches Chuuya, eyes wide and still and fixed as he held his breath, struck with wonder. The train comes to a stop as Dazai is falling asleep. An announcement sounds over the speakers, and the doors open with a beep. Someone steps off, and another steps on. He droops a little, jerking awake when he finds himself knocking against Chuuya's, and straightens. Chuuya's head is also drooping against his shoulder, eventually settling against him fully. Dazai does not even realize it when he falls against him too, cheek pressed to his red hair. They sleep. Dazai's favorite vacation house to break into and live in is on the countryside with a large field of greenery and wheat fields. It is stocked up heavily on all kinds of fancy brands of food and has many films piled up in drawers with the biggest screen TV in the main bedroom into the living room, and a huge bed that is actually so comfortable that it manages to put him to sleep some nights. Disabling the security measures is a piece of cake for him, and he thinks it may be the safest place for them. Now that Chuuya is healthier and can manage a long trek, as well as the fact that it's necessary at this point to hide from the authorities, Dazai brings him there. The vacation house is not the biggest Dazai has ever broken into. He didn't like those because they seemed unnecessarily spacious, especially when he was only one person. This house is big, but not too much. It has another floor upstairs with maybe about 5 rooms, and the drawing room is a decent size with a huge screen TV and a couch and a kitchen island. He likes that the kitchen is stocked with food that lasts years, like oats and pasta and canned food. Canned crab, more specifically, along with olives, pickles, and whatnot. There's a bar, too, full of some fine alcohol. They are underage, of course, but that didn't stop Dazai from trying a few of them. He didn't like any of it much. The house has a balcony and a terrace, too, with a vast view of the countryside, miles and miles of greenery and wheat fields in the hazy distance. When the sun comes up and goes down, they can see it in the full form from here, unblocked by architecture and tall buildings. Chuuya has never really managed to catch the sun, considering they always limit their time outside due to Chuuya's tendency to get a bit overwhelmed and overstimulated if they stay outside too long. He is still seemingly unhabitual to the noise and chaos of the world, but he slowly seems to grow his tolerance. It's been a long time since Dazai has sat anywhere just to watch the dawn come alive. He knows it in a cognitive way, that it's lovely. It's pretty, even if he really never feels anything. When they step out onto the balcony, Dazai looks to Chuuya, so he can see what he feels on his face. The orange-red dawn is glowing through the clouds like streaks of heaven, bright waves of light everywhere. The two of them stand next to the balustrade. Chuuya watches the sun come up while Dazai watches him, and the way his red hair shines in the sunrise, bright and vivid as fire. The way it makes his skin hazy with orange-yellow light creates alchemy in his eyes, and his face. It's as if he's losing himself into it, all wide-eyed wonder and a hushed kind of joy fixed on the sight. He is struggling to breathe from it all, his chest moving slightly on a small hitched exhale and almost soundless exhale. Breathless. His hand at his side scrabbles over the back of Dazai's until he finds it, intertwining their fingers and holding it tightly, as if he is feeling so much it overwhelms him and he feels the need to be grounded, to squeeze some of that intensity into Dazai's hand. The wind comes in and blows through them, blows through their hair and clothes, rustling tree branches and leaves somewhere in the distance. Birds chirp their songs. For the very first time, perhaps, Dazai almost feels it all. The cold air raw in his nerves and skin, and the life in the wind and the pounding beats of his heart. He can feel the warmth of the sun and Chuuya's hand in his. He can hear every sound, every rustle of the leaf on the tree branches, far in the distance, every chirp of the birdsong. He is so beautiful, as ethereal as an angel. Osamu. Chuuya's voice breathed out thick into the whipping winds in their ears. He squeezes his hand even tighter. Osamu. He says his name like it's a whole language. He's so beautiful, and Dazai feels wondrously, horribly alive. Every morning they wake up to see the sunrise. Every evening they sit and watch the sun go down. Some afternoons they lie on the green fields next to each other, close enough that their hands are almost touching, and Dazai tells him what each cloud looks like. And sometimes that ends up making Chuuya angry, because Dazai often makes shapes out of clouds in ways that make no sense to him. So Dazai starts pretending and makes outrageous claims and stories to confuse and anger Chuuya even more when he can't see what Dazai is seeing. What the fuck is wrong with you? How are you seeing all that? Dazai sighs at the cuss words. Truly, Chuuya's face is too pretty and innocent for such words, yet they seem to have stuck in his tiny, aggressive slug brain from all the places they've heard it, and now he won't stop using those words. He supposes it makes sense that his angry personality would be so drawn to such angry words. I don't know how Chuuya can't see it. It's clearly a man sitting on top of a crab with a spear in his hand. It's fucking round. It's not my fault Chuuya has no imagination. Chuuya glares at him. Well, Chuuya should tell me what that one looks like. Dazai points at a cloud. Their heads are close together. Like a puppy. Chuuya smiles slightly, and Dazai still remembers the first time he saw a whole box of them, and started floating and spinning around in the air out of emotions, as if he couldn't handle his feelings and needed to let them out physically through his ability. Using his ability in congruence with his emotions, instinctually and naturally, was normal to him, until Dazai explained to him that the authorities were looking for Chuuya, and he needed to hide his gift. Boring. Oi. Nee, does Chuuya know how to play tag? Dazai has only ever sat on the sidelines, on playground swings alone, watching other children chase after each other, laughter ringing in the air. He wondered why it never came naturally to him. To want to do those things, to go and play and run around with the other kids. He wondered what it was like to be effortless. Because every human thing, all Dazai's life, felt like effort. Felt like something he had consciously exerted himself to do against the void inside of him. He has always been curious. Huh? How do you play that? Dazai smiles slightly. He sits up. Then he pulls at Chuuya's hair, gets up and runs, laughing as Chuuya's angry screams follow him across the distance. He runs straight into the wheat field. He can hear Chuuya's running footsteps. Dazai? You have to catch me, Dazai says loudly, across the space and the wind between them. I'll run and you catch me. Chuuya blinks, then he has a smile across his face that's daring and competitive, almost a smirk. All right. Without using your ability, Chuuya, that's cheating. Chuuya's smirk drops. Dazai learns Chuuya is awfully competitive because he seems to take the tag game seriously. So seriously that he gets angry when he tries to catch Dazai but can't, almost pouncing on him as Dazai dodges out of his way quickly each time, laughing, almost giggling even, a childish glee filling him up. But then there's a moment he's staring at Dazai from across the distance, seeming almost lost and breathing hard after so long of not being able to catch Dazai and not knowing how. The wind plays with their hair and clothes, whipping it to the side. Dazai is smiling at him from afar, waiting for him. Something in Chuuya's glare and scowl falls softly. After that, he seems to let loose a little. He chases after Dazai, joining in his laughter, his almost giggles. For a time that feels like ages, they run around like children in a golden afternoon sunshine. At the end of it, they fall on the grass, trying to catch air and pleasantly exhausted, lying perpendicular to each other with bodies sprawled out in opposite directions and their heads upside down next to each other. There are some nights they sit out on the balcony under the stars, which are far more visible here with less of the light pollution of the city, before they head into bed. Dazai thinks it's very important for them to stay close at night, since Chuuya's ability isn't fully in his control, so Dazai needs to be the one next to him in case he needs to be nullified. Which is why they should absolutely sleep in the same bed, and the bed is so large it could hold 10 of both of them, so it's not a problem or anything. And if Chuuya likes to sidle up against him in his sleep, all warm and sweet, arms under his underarms, then it's only making it easier for Dazai to keep him nullified. Though, of course, it is very annoying that the chibi sticks to him so much like glue. It's too annoying. Chuuya even presses his cheek against his and smiles at him when he wakes. It turns out that Dazai was, in fact, correct about needing to be close. With the bed being so large, it's somewhat inevitable for Dazai to eventually drift away from Chuuya in the night. And this reveals a new development. When Dazai's eyes open suddenly in the middle of the night, as it happens with his insomnia, it's to a sight right above him in the dark. Dazai rubs the remaining sleep out of his eyes and blinks up hard to clear his vision. Chuuya, floating high over the bed, above Dazai, and his clothes are swaying in the air, his eyes closed and mouth slightly agape in his sleep. The light of the full moon fills the room with a blue haze. Chuuya is floating away and asleep. Dazai snickers, getting up to his feet on the massive bed and reaching his arms up for him. His snickers are starting to embarrassingly sound more like giggles the longer it goes on. Dazai stands high on his tiptoes, reaches further for him to try and get a grip on Chuuya so we can pull him down. "Chuuya," he sing-songs in a quiet voice as to not startle him, though that would be hilarious, seeing Chuuya wake up screaming as he falls onto the bed. But then he remembers, for some reason, the last time Chuuya screamed in his sleep, fighting and thrashing violently against monsters he can't recall, and the stunned horror on his white face, remaining for a good 10 minutes after. "Chuuya!" Dazai whisper yells, his fingers outstretched for him. He jumps a little. Even if he just brushes by him, it would be enough. It will startle Chuuya awake, but he will fall onto the bed, so it should be fine. He jumps even higher, the bed creaking. He manages to catch Chuuya's sleeve. He pulls, drawing Chuuya down without touching him directly, and only when Chuuya is low enough does he touch the skin of his wrist to nullify him. The distance he falls is small, but it gives enough impact to wake Chuuya abruptly, sat up on the bed with his eyes blinking fast and owlishly. "You were floating in your sleep." "Huh?" Chuuya blinks at him, still confused. "Mm-hmm." After a few more seconds of blinking in owlish confusion, Chuuya scoots close and shifts over against Dazai, his head on his chest and grabbing Dazai's arm to put it around himself. "Why did you let me go?" he whispers, now glaring at him with bleary eyes, as if this was all Dazai's fault. Dazai snorts. "It's not my fault Chuuya can't stay in one place, and who told Chuuya to float in his sleep?" "I can't control it, asshole." "Excuses, excuses." Dazai yawns. But the next time Dazai tries to make sure he has a good grip on Chuuya before he falls asleep. Now the problem is, the bed is so big and comfortable, and Chuuya sleeps like the arm of a clock. There have been times, when they used to sleep on the floor, that Chuuya's feet somehow ended up near Dazai's head. Though Chuuya goes to sleep every night with his arms around him, it's not every morning that they wake up the same way as that first morning. Chuuya sleeps spaciously, arms fallen wide open, legs spread, sometimes half on his stomach, sometimes like a starfish flat on his back. And so it tends to happen anyway. Each time Chuuya glares at him for letting him go, though the flush of his cheeks grows darker each time it happens, and it takes some nights getting used to, for them to be prepared. It's frankly annoying for it to be happening right now because Dazai is actually managing to sleep, his insomnia less severe. Maybe it's the bed, although he can't say he's ever slept this soundly and warmly. So there is only one thing new about this situation, the tiny body that sleeps soundly and warmly against him. One time, Dazai wakes right on time to catch Chuuya by the back of his shirt as he's floating away. Another time he grabs him by the ankle when he is already in the air, pulls him back down next to him. Another night, Dazai gets annoyed enough to just plop his body on top of Chuuya after another episode, to Chuuya's angry and indignant shrieks as he is being crushed under him. Another night, he catches Chuuya by the chest of his shirt and a wrist, then coming down to an arm while he's holding onto the chest of his shirt with his other hand, pulling him down gently, sleepily on top of his chest and wrapping his arms around him. It turns out to be a rather good idea, since Chuuya can't exactly spin around on the bed when he's sleeping right on Dazai. There's a CD player in the drawing room full of songs. Dazai knows each one of them at this point, having played them over and over for years to stave off the lonely silence, and because there aren't many things in life that can make me feel. Dazai begins as he puts the CD in the player and presses the play button. He closes his eyes as the first song starts, smiling slightly. But every now and then, his neck arches, face tilted upward, trying to feel every note, every word of the song. The song is haunting and slow, sweet. The song is lonely, like being the only one left in the world. Always. It feels like he's trying to reach through a chasm to experience it fully, the numbness that eats up his feelings. But he likes this one. He always tries to feel it with his mind. If he can't with his heart and soul, tries to pay attention to every detail. Yeah? He opens his eyes, looking at Chuuya, who's lounging back against the settee, arms across the back of it. He's heard all kinds of songs at this point, in the malls, the cafe jukeboxes that Dazai uses to ruin people's days, playing the Rickroll or Apple Pen song 10 times in a row, The people in apartments blaring trashy music as they pass by at night. The loud party music that pounds in your heart coming from a house. Most of them tended to overwhelm Chuuya, making him slap his hands over his ears tightly or leave him irritable after. But every now and then, Dazai continues with a slight smile, and he's in front of Chuuya, leaning down with his hands on his knees so they're eye to eye. There's a song that makes me feel. Chuuya's eyes are roving over his face. My baby here on earth. His voice is gentle whispers, only just over the singer's, chin tilted up slightly. Chuuya's eyes stare into his own, the subtle convulsion of his throat. Showed me what my heart was worth. It's thrilling when Dazai recognizes the look in Chuuya's hazy eyes. It gets his heart pumping, kicking up a storm, to be looked at in the way Chuuya looks at sunrises, loses himself in the way he is now, in his voice, gentle and easy and a little off-key. But most people don't get to be serenaded by people as handsome as Dazai, even throughout their entire lives, so he supposes the chibi should consider himself fortunate. Nothing in the world belongs to me but my love, mine, all mine. This fic is now slightly over halfway finished. I just wanted to say that the author changed names and now it's alexmeg instead of Touches Like the Sun, but I'm going to leave the thumbnail as Touches Like the Sun just because it's more consistent overall, but the link should be right in the description. The two of them stand by the balustrade. Fuck, I'm gonna have to look that up.